Hey, welcome. Chalet is in the house. Woohoo! Good evening to you too. And good morning to you. If you are in the US watching live, it's good morning. And for me, it's good evening. Put my handy dandy kissing potion from the 1970s. Original. Alrighty. So let me update you a little bit. There's Judge Gohl actually filed two things today. She did not file on the motion to dismiss, but the defense had filed about discovery, about the prosecution always being late with their discovery, and asked that the court does something, and preferably sanctions on the prosecution. And she said no sanctions for the prosecution, but she did order that discovery be given within 10 days. And any new discovery that happens, that it should be given within 7 days, and that both sides need to give their trial exhibits and witness lists and everything for trial to each other by October 1st. That was the first thing that she filed. Hey, Frugal's in the house. There's a couple of Delphi updates before we continue with what was filed yesterday. So that was the first thing the judge filed. The second one, actually, this was the motion to dismiss. Oh, the one she hasn't filed on yet is the one where the prosecution is asking that everything relating to third party is not admissible, the motion in limine from them. She hasn't filed on that yet, but the motion to dismiss, of course, she denied it. And pretty much she said that there was no evidence that no evidence was presented that the state did destroy evidence that might be exculpatory, specifically regarding Brad Holder. And so that was, kind of expected. It's kind of like, if you put those two together, they haven't given over the evidence that the state has not given the defense the discovery. She ordered that they do it within 10 days. If they had that discovery, maybe they'd have the evidence they need to show that other evidence had been destroyed. Right? Maybe not. Maybe it's a big nothing burger, but whatever. To date, they have not proven that the state has destroyed evidence. So she is denying the request to dismiss the case. So everything's moving forward. All right. So you guys ready? Let's get started on, let's see if I can I zoom this? Oh, full screen layout. What happens if I do that? Oh, why can't I just, okay, so if I do it this way, then it's too small to read. All right. So I'm going to remove that. I have another way to do it. Present. Window. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. Do this. Oh, wait. Remove. Cancel. Oh, there we go. Sorry, doing some little technical things here. I want to Go like that. Okay, so there you can see me little, and you can see the PDF. All right. And how about I make it bigger? All right. And we left off before number 3. Went through that. Went through that. Number 3. Number 3 is where we left off. Frugal says, I may need to teach you how to use OBS when you get back. It's a little more difficult to use, but way more flexible. Sure. I know. This is definitely StreamYard is just like, doesn't have all the bells and whistles of OBS. But I don't know that I want to work that hard, if that makes sense. We'll see. All right. So let's get to this. If for anybody that missed the first one, if you want to see the first 8 pages, it's in the True Crime playlist. Yeah, Virgo says understandable. I worked at a marketing agency that did a lot of digital seminars and things, so you might have speakers that aren't, you have live speakers, but you have speakers that are in another country that are joining kind of like in a Zoom kind of way. And a lot of different, customized backgrounds and ticker tapes and different things, right? And of course they used an OBS system. Yeah. So this is the defense. So when they just had the hearings, I think it was 2 weeks ago now. This is the Delphi case, Abby and Libby. Richard Allen is charged with their murders. After the hearings, the defense filed a memorandum of additional information supporting their position. All right. On the state's motion in limine about the whole third. So you got to understand about third party. If you want to say in general that somebody else may have done this without naming names, there's nothing stopping a defense from doing that. But they're naming names. And so then it becomes this whole third party defense thing that it's like you kind of need to get it approved. But the defense, the prosecution is just saying, no, you can't mention this, you can't mention that, you can't mention this, you can't mention that. They're asking the court to grant that all of this is inadmissible, right? Which, given Judge Gull's reputation on this case, is very likely that she will grant the prosecution's request. So, which is kind of weird, especially, maybe she'll say that some of the things are inadmissible and other things are allowed, because it's kind of hard with the crime scene and with the fact that the law enforcement investigated for years, for at least 2 or 3 years, open investigations into the ritualistic side of this. They got they got experts to give their opinion as to whether or not it was ritualistic. And that's how, it's like the defense didn't just make all this up. The defense got it from their discovery, Okay, so let's get going. So number 3, the Sixth Amendment to the Constitution and Article 1 of the Indiana Constitution protect Richard Allen's right to present evidence that someone else committed the crime. Now, as we go forward, I'll just say the constitutions, if they refer to this again, because it seems like a lot of times they do. Evidence is relevant when it has any tendency to make the existence of any fact that is of consequence to the determination of the action more probable or less probable than it would be without the evidence. Okay. And this is one of the things that Judge Gull had said, like in some kind of previous ruling, that she wasn't going to allow anything unless they could prove relevancy. She said that. So it makes sense that they're bringing up relevancy. Quote, evidence which tends to show that someone else omitted, or I think that means committed the crime. There's a few typos in this. Committed the crime logically makes it less probable that the defendant committed the crime and thus meets the definition of relevance. Cites case law. In order for a defendant to admit evidence that a third party is responsible for the crime, the defendant must show some connection between the third party and the crime. It states case law. Again, they're kind of throwing back what she said that they require, she's going to require this relevancy and the connection. So they're putting it right here that they're going to meet what she's asking, what she's already asked for. When the state excludes competent, reliable evidence that is central to the defendant's case, his constitutional right to present evidence is abridged. Cites case law. Indiana courts have found the following evidence to be competent and reliable evidence central to the accused defense that someone else did it. For instance, in Allen versus State, they cite the case. This is a different Allen, not Richard Allen. The defense provided a reconstruction of the crime and testimony that another person made statements linking himself rather than the defendant to the murders, which should have been admitted. Ooh, you know what I read here? Elvis Fields, right? So what should have been admitted is that the defense had a reconstruction of the crime and testimony that another person, think of Elvis Fields, made statements linking himself rather than the defendant to the murders which should have been admitted. Okay. In Joyner versus State, evidence that a married man was having an affair with the victim, worked at the same place as the victim, the defendant had sexual relations with the victim the night before the murder, lied to his wife about his whereabouts, and had an argument with the victim on the last day she was seen alive, and had lied on his time card at work the day after the murder was admissible. In Rohr versus State, evidence that a prior beating of a child victim by mother, not defendant, caused the victim's extensive injuries was admissible. Okay, so that a prior beating. So there was a defendant that was being accused, and the defense is that the mother did it, not the defendant. And so they wanted to show that the mother had a prior beating of the child, and it was admissible. In Kooky versus State, evidence of a newspaper article with a picture of a person wanted in connection with burglaries in the area who resembled the defendant was admissible. What are they getting at with that one? The bridge guy picture or pictures that Brad Holder put on his Facebook? I don't know. Understanding that evidence of third-party suspects is relevant. Oh, yeah, because I think they were saying that they didn't want any other, like you can't put Kevin Kline and Bridge Guy or Ron Logan and Bridge Guy or other Brad Holder and Bridge Guy, like you can't put the picture side by side to be able to compare that other people also look like Bridge Guy. I think the state was saying that that would also be inadmissible. And so maybe that's what they're getting at. Understanding that evidence of third-party suspects is relevant, the question then turns to the standard the court must utilize in determining whether the third-party evidence is admissible. As the Indiana Court of Appeals has stated, to be admissible in a criminal prosecution, evidence that a third party has committed the crime with which the defendant is charged need not show substantial proof of a probability that the third person has committed the act. It need only be capable of raising a reasonable doubt of the defendant's guilt. While a criminal defendant may present alternative perpetrator evidence at trial in order to cast doubt on the defendant's guilt, the defendant must first lay an evidentiary foundation to establish that the alternative perpetrator evidence has an inherent tendency to connect the alternative perpetrator to the actual commission of the charged crime. Okay, so there has to be a connection. They must lay an evidentiary foundation. So I think that's what they're going to do, is lay the foundation. Here, Mr. Allen's evidence of third-party suspects falls well within this category of competent, reliable evidence central to his defense that he is innocent and that other people committed the murders. Mr. Allen's evidence has an inherent tendency to connect the third-party suspects to the commission of the crime. Brad Holder. Now here's a whole section and pages on Brad Holder. Brad Holder is the father of Logan Holder, who was Abigail Williams' boyfriend at the time of the murders. Law enforcement identified Brad Holder as a suspect by February 17th, 2017. So that would be three days after the girls were found. Oh, which it goes, which is the next thing it says, 3 days after the bodies were discovered. And then it cites the defense exhibit. Law enforcement received several tips that Brad Holder was the man in the video found on Liberty German's cell phone, purportedly taken at the south end of Monon High Bridge at 2:13 p.m. on February 13th, 2017, and that he was involved in the murders. Memorandum in support of the accused's motion for Frank's hearing. Oh, the Frank's memo, pages 81 and 89. In his first interview with law enforcement on February 17th, 2017, Brad Holder told officers that he had never met Abigail Williams. In his second interview with law enforcement on August 30th, 2023, Brad Holder claimed that he had difficulty remembering which girl that Logan dated, despite the fact that the girl Logan dated had been involved in a high-profile murder case. In this second interview, Holder now remembered that he had supervised one date between Logan Holder and Abigail Williams. Brad Holder then told a third different story as to how many times he had met Abigail Williams when he was deposed on May 2nd, 2024. And it cites the deposition. In his deposition, Brad Holder claimed he had met Abigail Williams twice, including once at third-party suspect Pat Westfall's house. It is also important to note that Pat Westfall never admitted to the police that Abby Williams had been to his house. And he's had at least 2 interviews that I've seen with YouTubers, and he has said that she had never been to his house. They might have been like at a picnic together, but not at his house. Richard Allen has a right to have the jury consider the following about Brad Holder's second statement on August 30th, 2023, and whether his second statement and his deposition 9 months later, both providing different accounts of his interactions with Abby, tend to show that he is a third-party suspect. Number 1, whether Holder lied in his first interview on February 17th, 2017, to inoculate himself against being a suspect by denying having met Abby. This is inconsistent with his statement in August 2023 when he stated he had met Abby with his deposition testimony that he met her twice. Number 2, the validity or lack of validity of Brad's initial claim that he had never met Abby in his February 17th, 2017 interview 3 days after she was found murdered, but then somehow was able to remember 6 years later when interviewed on August 30th, 2023, that he had in fact met Abigail Williams one time. Number 3, the likelihood that in 2023, Brad would not know which of the murdered girls his son dated following the media coverage from this high-profile case, or whether his claim to not remember which girl his son dated was simply another attempt by Brad Holder to feign ignorance of his knowledge of Abby to throw law enforcement off his scent as a suspect. Number 4, the likelihood that Holder's ever-changing stories of meeting Abby, including his last story that he met her twice, once at Pat Westfall's house, is indicative of a man who can't keep his stories straight and only changes his stories because he is unaware of law enforcement evidence of those meetings, causing Holder to step closer to the truth with every account he tells. 5, why would Pat Westfall choose to not tell law enforcement that Abby had been at his house, as Brad Holder claimed in his deposition? And does such omission show that Westfall was concerned about being connected to Abby Williams? In the course of the investigation, law enforcement found that Brad Holder posted many pictures of runes on Facebook and discussed their symbolism and magic powers. His Facebook posts indicate he believes in the magical powers of runes. And then they cite the exhibit. Even more revealing are Brad Holder's own words in which he admits that runes hold magical properties. Brad Holder liked a post describing an outdoor sacrifice with a rune painted in human blood on a tree. That's not this case, this is a different picture that he liked, a picture that someone else had posted. Brad Holder also posted a picture on Facebook depicting a scene eerily similar to that of the bodies when they were found. Yes, we talked about that in my summary video. He intentionally inscribed a temporary tattoo on his hand in a pattern similar to the sticks and branches placed on Abby. He even retired Indiana State Police Detective Kevin Murphy admitted that the sticks placed on Abby's body matched the temporary tattoo that Brad Holder inked on his hand just a few weeks after the girls were murdered. Which you see, when he posted that a few weeks later, nobody knew except law enforcement that sticks were on Abby in that pattern, right? Furthermore, Holder painted and then posted a picture of Odin's sacrifice in which the Norse pagan god Odin is hanging upside down, one leg is bent in such a manner that his foot is resting against his calf. The position of Odin's legs in Brad Holder's painting is almost exactly the position in which the killer placed Abby's legs. Brad Holder believes in the power of magic and blood as it relates to magic. This is evidenced by his Facebook posts, as well as Amber Holder's testimony that Brad Holder intentionally cut his hand and allowed the blood to drip on his Odin altar. Amber Holder testified that Brad Holder took her hand and cut her hand to drip the blood onto the altar. Major Pat Cicero testified that the marking found on the tree near the bodies was transferred to the tree with Liberty German's blood. Dr. Perlmutter and Major Cicero testified that the marking on the tree appeared to be an upside-down L. Dr. Perlmutter testified that this resembles the rune Lagus. Dr. Perlmutter testified that runes charged by blood carry additional importance and magical powers, and that blood is the highest offering to the gods. The Norse pagan ritual videotaped by Brad Holder in Fort Wayne clearly showed Pat Westfall using his hand to mark a tree in some fashion, similar to the Facebook post referenced earlier, which was marked with human blood, which Brad Holder liked. So a note, in his interviews, Pat Westphal claims that he was placing something up in the tree, like a rock with a rune on it, or chicken bones, or whatever. He was placing something up in the tree, not painting the tree with blood. But the video's out there for anyone to look at and see what you think. He even said in his interview, he's like, I should go back to that place and see if whatever it is that I put up there is still there. Because he can't remember what it was that he put up there. And for anyone who doesn't know, Patrick Westphal is like 6'7" or something. He's like huge. Brad Holder testified that one of the times he met Abigail Williams. Hey, can somebody the last comment that I see is Frugal saying understandable like 20 minutes ago. And maybe you guys are just listening and so you're not writing anything. Can somebody just make yeah, we hear you, or we're listening, or something, make a little comment so I know that the comments are working. Otherwise, maybe I need to refresh that or something. Oh, still here. Okay, good. It's working. Thank you so much, Frugal. All right. Brad Holder testified that one of the times he met Abby took place at the home of third-party suspect Patrick Westphal. Amber Holder, Brad Holder's ex-wife, testified that Brad Holder told her that Patrick Westphal and his crew murdered Abby and Libby. Richard Allen has a 6th and 14th Amendment right to present to the jury these facts and to argue that Brad Holder was pointing the finger at Patrick Westphal to either A, insulate himself, Holder, as a suspect by implicating Patrick Westphal, or B, that Patrick Westphal, who had no real alibi, actually killed those girls and Brad Holder knew it and wanted someone to know in the event that he, Holder, was ever accused of the murders, or C, that Patrick Westphal, acting in concert with Brad Holder, had the girls abducted while Holder was at work, awaiting Holder's arrival in Delphi later, at which time they killed the girls. These facts and arguments, along with the knowledge that both Holder and Westphal were Norse paganists, and the belief of law enforcement and expert witnesses that the crime scene was filled with Norse pagan elements, all tend to show Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal killed Abigail Williams and Liberty German, and therefore this evidence should be presented to the jury. Okay, so that's what the defense is claiming. They're naming. So I don't know. I kind of have a hard time believing that the defense would be making up naming names if they didn't have some serious receipts with the discovery of the evidence, right? Or their own depositions and their own investigations and everything. I think they might say someone, we believe that someone practicing Norse paganism committed these crimes, and not name names. I think that they take the extra step and they're actually naming names. I think I don't know what evidence they have, just like we don't know everything that the prosecution might have. They might have more than what they've released to us that they would show in trial. And then we'd go, oh, okay. Well, yeah, I believe he's guilty because they have something that they haven't shared. But yeah, with the defense, how can you be that bold and come out and say that all tend to show that these two names killed Abby and Libby? That's pretty bold. I can't imagine them faking it. Now, did they really do it? I don't know. I'm not saying that they did. I'm just saying that if I was a defense attorney, I don't think I would name names unless I had some serious receipts. Oh, you're playing Diablo 4. Cool. I know a lot of times when I'm listening to somebody, whether it's live or replay, I'm doing my crossword puzzle game and listening. Consistent with the low bar required to honor a defendant's constitutional right to present third-party suspect evidence, Amber Holder's August 1st, 2024 testimony exhibits an inference that Brad Holder and Patrick Westphal were involved in the murders. Amber Holder testified that she is Brad Holder's ex-wife and that Brad confided in her that he, Brad, and Patrick had a falling out over something that happened in the woods near a river involving blood. Furthermore, Amber testified that Brad confided to her that Patrick and his crew killed the girls because of Westphal's belief that Abigail's mom was a race traitor. So like she was dating somebody who was not purely white. Dr. Perlmutter also testified that individuals adhering to the white nationalist version of Odinism would kill others because of the belief that someone was a race traitor. Furthermore, Amber testified that Brad told her that Patrick wanted to move on from animal sacrifices to human sacrifices, and that this was the real source of the falling out between Holder and Westphal. In his deposition, Holder denied ever making any of these statements to Amber Holder. Brad's denial of uttering those statements to Amber makes Holder's statement subject to impeachment at trial. So this, remember I mentioned earlier when they were talking about like what a witness said, like somebody who says something, and I mentioned Elvis Fields. Well, maybe they're also like using that about this one. Bruegel says, I'll have to introduce you to Hellier when I get back. It's 2 seasons tied to spooky things in the mountains of Kentucky. It's similar to some of this stuff. I think you would find it interesting. Sounds great. You know what's really interesting? If you look up feral people of the Appalachians, it's not Bigfoot. It's not people that maybe, during they ran into the hills during the Civil War or something. No, I mean, it's probably they're human, but they've evolved differently. And they're called feral people of the Appalachians. Look up that. That's some spooky stuff. And Kentucky, the mountains of Kentucky are the Appalachians. Okay, so moving on to Brad Holder's alibi is in question because of the 4:33 a.m. phone activity. Bruegel says it's tied to the Green Man and the Mothman prophecies. Yeah, those are all that's all cryptology, right? Okay, so his alibi. Detective Jerry Holman testified that Brad, I'm just going to say Brad, all right, had an alibi as he left work at 2:45 p.m. on February 13th and was 40 minutes away from the Monon High Bridge. First Sergeant Chris Cecil of the Indiana State Police testified that the phone ultimately found under Abby's body did not receive any SMS messages from 4:06 p.m. on the 13th. Oh yeah, there was a ping at 5:44, but the receive SMS messages from 4:06 p.m. until 4:33 a.m. on February 14th. This suggests that Liberty German's cell phone was not connected to a cell tower at that time. Law enforcement's claim is that the phone had remained under Liberty's body. It was Libby's phone under Abby's body from around 3:30 p.m. on the 13th until it was found around noon on the 14th. However, cutting against that theory is the fact that a police report references Sergeant Mitchell Blocker's belief that the phone, as of around 10 p.m. on February 13th, was either no longer in working condition or that it was out of the area. We know from Chris Cecil that the phone was in working order because it connected to the cell tower at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. Therefore, the police report supports the fact that the phone was out of the area for a period of time. Okay. In further support that the phone was out of the area is the fact that from 5:44 p.m. on February 13th until 4:33 a.m. on the 14th, the phone in question did not connect to the tower in spite of law enforcement's claim that the phone had never moved from under Liberty German's body from roughly 3:30 p.m. on the 13th until the girls were found around noon on the 14th. Libby's phone received no SMS messages from 4:06 p.m. on the 13th until it suddenly received 15 SMS messages at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th. It defies all logic that 15 individuals suddenly sent SMS messages to Libby's phone at 4:33 a.m. on the 14th when she had been missing for over 14 hours. When Liberty German's phone once again connected with the tower, as Chris Cecil finally admitted during his testimony, all of those messages awaiting Libby's cell phone to connect to a tower finally matriculated onto Libby's phone at 4:33 a.m. The simple explanation is that someone who was at the scene turned on the phone at 4:33 a.m., causing the phone to connect to the tower once again at 4:33 a.m. Jerry Holman testified that in law enforcement's theory of events, Richard Allen never returned to the crime scene after he left around 3:30 p.m. on the 13th. Therefore, who could have been at the scene at 4:33 a.m. to turn the phone on? If Abby and Libby were killed around 4:33 a.m. on February 14th, Brad Holder's alibi for 3:30 p.m. on the 13th is meaningless, as is his alleged alibi that he was at workout anytime at 2 a.m., workout being a gym, at 2 a.m. on February 14th, the only time he ever went to the gym at 2 a.m. These phone issues are a major problem for the prosecution's contention that Richard Allen acted alone and had left the area where the bodies were found by 3:30 p.m. on the 13th, and certainly provide the minimum nexus, along with other evidence detailed herein, required to clear the hurdle that allows third-party suspect evidence. Remember that hurdle is relevant and connected. Okay, moving on to Patrick Westphal. Brad Holder is connected with other suspects in this case. One of those suspects is Patrick Westphal. And I'll just say Patrick. Patrick was at home near the Monon High Bridge on February 13th, 2000. We know it's 2017, with his son Nick. And then there was an interview on August 27, 2023, that it's referencing. There is no proof of Westphal's whereabouts on February 13th other than his statement. To date, law enforcement has provided no concrete evidence of Westphal's whereabouts on February 13th. Brad and Patrick knew of each other from an army deployment in Afghanistan. Patrick and Brad practiced asatru. All throughout this, they cite all the places. Okay, I'm not going to read all the citations. They were members of a small kindred, which is a group of people who believe in asatru and who gather to hold meetings and worship the gods. Patrick is a priest or holy man in the asatru religion and hosted kindreds at his home in Delphi on Sundays. Brad attended these meetings. Holder and Westphal attended a pagan ritual videotaped by Brad in 2016 in Fort Wayne, Indiana, which was entered into evidence. Near the end of the video, Patrick Westphal appears to be marking the tree with his hand. Major Cicero testified that a tree at the crime scene was marked with the blood of Liberty German. Dr. Perlmutter testified that the mark was in the form of a rune. Major Cicero admitted that whoever sliced Libby's throat could have Libby's blood on their hands. The forensic pathologist who conducted the autopsy admitted that upon slicing Libby's neck, the amount of blood and the force of that blood exiting Libby's neck upon slicing it would have been very powerful, squirting as far as 4 to 6 feet, no problem. Therefore, the jury could conclude that upon slicing her neck, the blood forcefully covered the killer's hand, who then used that blood to mark the tree. Or they could have been drained of their blood and then used the blood from a bowl or a bag or something, like a can of paint, to put on there. But okay, they say that his hand would have been over the neck and it would have squirted onto his hand. And okay. Patrick Westphal told police that he had sacrificed a chicken by cutting off its head. Dr. Perlmutter testified that sacrifices are almost always carried out by slitting the throat of the animal or person being sacrificed, and furthermore, that practitioners of these religions often begin with animal sacrifices. As mentioned earlier, Amber testified that Brad stated that Patrick wanted to elevate from animal sacrifice to human sacrifice. Furthermore, Patrick acknowledges that Asatru worship takes place in a clearing in the forest. This is consistent with Dr. Perlmutter's testimony that rituals will occur in open spaces in the forest. Both victims in this case were found in a clearing in the forest. This creates an inference that Patrick was involved in the murders of Abby and Libby and that they were sacrificed in an Asatru Norse pagan ritual. Let me, you want to say hello? Hello. Here, let me move this just for a moment. She's cleaning up first. Okay. Here we go. There's hello. Piggy. Hello, hello. Oh, yeah. Can you? Sean. Yeah.
Hello, Sean.
We look forward to say. Oh, he says hello, so stay. And we've got Cassie here. Cassie, come here, Cassie. Cassie's in front of the screen. Cassie, come here. Frugal just said something. Oh, Cassie. Oh, Cassie's such a big boy. Yeah, see you in 2 weeks. We're looking forward to it. We're ready. Oh, there's Cassie. Cassie's a big boy. Get down. Go down there. Okay, let me add this back to the stage. All right, so now we're moving on to Elvis. Oh, you're going to come sit here? Well, before we move on to Elvis, wait, she brought a chair in. Yay! Oh, look at the baby. There's Piggy. Can you guys see Piggy? Here. Oh, not that. This one. There you go. Does that help? You can see better?
For all of you, this case is interesting enough.
Go away. Piggy. He's not being impossible not to see Piggy. Yeah, he's so big. You can't miss him. That's for sure. And this intermission sponsored by Piggy and Chani. Aww. It's her baby. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Mommy Kitty.
There's Mama Kitty. We got Artemis. Who's down? Someone's down by my feet. Oh, that's Cassie's down by my feet. I have to be careful. The rollers on my chair don't roll over their tail. All right, I'm gonna keep going. So this is gonna be like a little small box, but see, it's a toot.
Yeah.
It's toot.
Yeah. Okay.
Here. Okay. All right. because then I'm going to put this up so I can see. All right. Elvis Fields, a Rushville, Indiana resident, is a suspect in this case who was investigated by law enforcement. There is no doubt that Elvis Fields knew of the existence of Brad Holder. He admitted as much in his deposition. Additionally, Detective Kevin Murphy testified that Brad can be linked to Elvis through Facebook posts and that Elvis Fields' Facebook posts mimic those of Brad. Elvis testified in his deposition that Brad frequently mimicked his Facebook posts when he posted pictures of knives, brass knuckles, sticks in the woods, and other items. It is a logical conclusion that Brad Holder knew Elvis Fields in some manner if he was mimicking Elvis's Facebook posts. No, Elvis was mimicking Brad's Facebook posts. It would be exceedingly rare for a stranger to follow someone's posts and even rarer to mimic them, especially when both were suspects in the murders of Abby and Libby. Former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click testified that Elvis Fields was a suspect or accomplice in the murders and that he was interviewed several times by law enforcement. After one such interview, in which law enforcement collected a buccal swab from Elvis Fields, Detective Kevin Murphy drove Elvis Fields home. Detective Murphy testified that after Elvis got out of his car, he returned and asked Detective Murphy if his spit was found on one of the girls, but he could explain it away, would he still be in trouble? Elvis lived in Rushville. He testified that he was at home in Rushville on February 13th. He denied ever being in Delphi. If he spits on one of the girls, this places him in Delphi at or around the time of the murders. Elvis's statement is admissible pursuant to this code, then existing mental, emotional, or physical condition. Under this rule, quote, a statement of the declarant's then existing state of mind, such as motive, design, intent, or plan, or emotional, sensory, or physical condition, such as mental feeling, pain, or bodily health, is admissible as an exception to the hearsay rule. Okay, they're saying it's an exception to the hearsay rule. Elvis Fields' statement is clearly indicative of a guilty state of mind and indicates he has a mental feeling of anxiousness over his conduct and possible ramifications. Good argument. I'm not sure Judge Gull's going to buy it, but that's a good argument. Additionally, Elvis denied making said statement to Detective Murphy. It is expected that Elvis will continue to deny asking the question at trial, thus making it proper impeachment evidence. This statement is also impeachment evidence contradicting Elvis's statement that he was never in Delphi. Finally, Elvis's question to Detective Murphy was precisely that, a question. Hearsay is a statement that, one, is not made by the declarant while testifying at a trial or hearing, and two, is offered in evidence to prove the truth of the matter asserted. A statement is a person's oral assertion, written assertion, or nonverbal conduct if the person intended it as an assertion, like a nod. The hearsay rule does not bar commands, requests, or questions. And they cite case law. Interesting. Rod Abrams is a friend of Elvis Fields. In his statement to police, Rod stated that at the time of the murders, Ned Smith drove a white pickup truck, and that also sometimes Elvis drove a white pickup truck. Tina Garrison saw a white truck parked in the old CPS building near the Monon High Bridge Trail at approximately 4:20 p.m. on the day of the murders. This Tina Garrison report was tendered near the end of the day as an exhibit on August 1st, 2024, at the hearing. Given that both Elvis and his friend Ned Smith drove white pickup trucks, this potentially places them in Delphi near the scene of the murders on February 13th. Well, the only thing I have to say here is that it's equal weight between them saying Richard Allen's car was there and seeing the pickup trucks. It's equal weight. So if you want to say that the car places Richard Allen at the scene of the crime and therefore he's guilty, then it's equal weight that these people with their white pickup trucks being at the scene of the crime could have equally committed the crimes. I mean, if you're giving that much weight to Richard Allen's car, then you have to give equal weight to these cars. Detective Kevin Murphy also testified that an analysis of Elvis's cell phone records established that Elvis used his phone often throughout a typical day. Strikingly, he testified that on February 13th, Elvis did not use his phone between roughly 10:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. All of the above is documented in Todd Click and Detective Kevin Murphy's reports. Statements made in a police report are not hearsay when offered to show the simple fact that the statements were made rather than for the truth of the matter asserted. And then it gives a case law, and this particular case was a report made to DCS by the accused. It was offered to show that it was made just days before the child who lived with the subject of the report accused the defendant of molestation and not for the truth of the matter. The report was not hearsay, and its exclusions violated the Sixth Amendment of the United States Constitution. And then an Indiana law states that investigative reports are admissible when offered by the accused in a criminal case. All right, well, there's your case law. Finally, the fact that Elvis's friends, Rod Abrams and Ned Smith, could not keep their stories straight concerning their whereabouts with Elvis on February 13th is also important. According to Todd Click and Detective Kevin Murphy, Abrams told different stories as to his whereabouts with Elvis on February 13th. In one story, Abrams claims that he, Elvis, and Ned were all in a Muncie hospital visiting a friend on February 13th. In his interview in 2018, Abrams admitted having his phone with him while in Muncie on February 13th. However, when pressed whether his phone pings would verify that he was in Muncie at the time, Abrams stated that the hospital equipment would likely block his phone's location. During his deposition, Rod Abrams testified that he did not believe he even owned a phone in 2017, which is a different story than he told a few years earlier. While Abrams and Smith claimed that Elvis was with them in Muncie on February 13th, Elvis Fields denies that he even ever left Rushville on that day. Yet again, Detective Murphy testified that Elvis Fields' phone records show that the man who constantly used his phone on any given day for some reason did not use his phone between roughly 10:30 a.m. and 7:30 p.m. of February 13th, a period of 9 hours. By Google Maps, it is roughly a 2-hour drive from Delphi to Rushville, giving Elvis plenty of time to leave his phone in Rushville, drive or be driven in a white pickup truck to Delphi to participate in the murders, and then return to Rushville. These changed and inconsistent stories related to Elvis's alibi, as well as to Elvis's phone activity for February 13th, provide further inferences of connections between Elvis and the murders and the other third-party suspects. Furthermore, while Johnny Messer admits to knowing Elvis Fields, Rod Abrams, and Ned Smith, That is not the story that Elvis Fields and Rod Abrams told to police. Both Elvis and Rod deny knowing Johnny Messer. These points were made in documents provided to the court, along with the notes that pointed to the specific pages or timestamps on the items. These inconsistencies and denials provide evidence that the parties can't keep their stories straight on something as basic as whether they know each other. These discrepancies could certainly be viewed by a jury as attempts by guilty parties to hide their connections in order to deceive law enforcement. It would be up to the jury to decide. The inconsistencies and discrepancies concerning their alibis and whether they even know each other are examples of things the jury should hear concerning third-party suspects. These discrepancies, combined with Elvis's clear connection with Brad Holder through Facebook and Elvis's incriminating question to Murphy, support Richard Allen's 6th and 14th Amendment rights to pursue these third-party suspects. All right, moving on to Johnny Messer, and we're on page 22 of 27. I think we might be able to finish this up in this show by 10:30, like about another half hour. Johnny Messer, a former Rushville resident, is also a suspect in this case who connects the Logansport Delphi crew of Brad and Patrick to the Rushville crew of Elvis, Rod, and Ned in Rushville. Okay, so he's the nexus. Johnny Messer is the nexus between Brad and Patrick, who are in Logansport and Delphi, which are close to each other, and Elvis, Rod, and Ned, who are from Rushville. Johnny Messer is the nexus between them. There are pictures on social media of Brad, Patrick, and Johnny together at an Odinist gathering. That photo was admitted into evidence on August 1st, 2024, and both Kevin Murphy and Todd Click testified as to the connection between Brad, Patrick, and Johnny. Detective Murphy and Todd Click testified that Holder, Westfall, and Messer were all associated with the Vinlander Social Club, hereinafter the Vinlanders, a club for Europeans, as explained by Patrick Westfall. Johnny Messer was a probate with the Vinlanders. Detective Murphy and Todd Click testified that the Vinlanders engaged in Asatru-based practices, worship gods such as Odin and Thor, and were Odinists. Johnny Messer confirmed that most members of the Vinlanders were into Odinism. Patrick and Johnny traveled to Minnesota together for a Vinlander event. Johnny's uncle is Billy Messer. Elvis Fields previously lived with Johnny Messer's uncle in the Rushville, Indiana area. I knew that. That's all this stuff I've pretty much known, right? So Johnny's uncle was Elvis's landlord. Oh, I mean, like, I don't know, slept on the couch or whatever. Yeah. So it's likely that Elvis knew Johnny because he knew his uncle. It's established that he knew the uncle. He lived with the uncle. However, one of the most important aspects of the Johnny Messer evidence is his role as a recruiter in the Vinlanders. According to former Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Click, Messer denied recruiting members for the Vinlanders. However, Click also testified that he had interviewed multiple men who admitted that Messer had recruited them to join the Vinlanders. Messer's denial of being a recruiter for the Vinlanders, juxtaposed against Click's investigation, revealing that Messer was in fact actually trying to recruit members to the Vinlanders, would indicate that Messer felt he had something to hide. What could that be? The obvious answer would be Messer was the recruiter that hooked Elvis Fields up with Brad Holder. After all, Messer knew both Holder and Fields, although Fields denied knowing Messer. The fact that Messer's former girlfriend, Taylor Hornaday, told Kevin Murphy that around Valentine's in 2017, right, and the girls' bodies were found on Valentine's Day, February 14th, that Messer was up there visiting his Vinlander friends, Westfall and Holder, and that a red substance she believed was blood was found on the car he drove up there, provides additional connectivity between all these parties and the murders, and that Richard Allen has a constitutional right for the jury to hear of those connections. Kagan Klein and Jerry Anthony Klein. Kagan Klein is the son of Jerry Anthony Klein. He was 22 years old in February 2017. Man, his pictures look a lot older than 22. And he and Jerry, his dad, resided in Peru, Indiana in February 2017. Detective David Vito testified that Kagan Klein was communicating with Libby using a fake Snapchat account under the name of Anthony Schatz in the days leading up to and on February 13th. The content of these messages is unknown. He further testified that Kagan Klein admitted to driving to Delphi, Indiana with his father, Jerry Anthony Klein, on February 13th, and that Kagan Klein waited in the vehicle while Jerry went to the woods in the area where Abby and Libby's bodies were ultimately found. Detective David Vito testified that Kagan Klein stated that when his father returned to the vehicle, he had blood on him. Roland Purdy further testified that Kagan Klein admitted that they discarded a knife in a river when they were driving home. All of this evidence creates an inference that Kagan Klein and Jerry Anthony Klein murdered Abby and Libby. And I believe that there was extensive diving searches in whatever area of river that they claimed to have thrown the knife. But I don't think it was never found. Ron Logan. The bodies of Abby and Libby were located on February 14th on the property of Ron Logan. Deputy Special Agent Nicole Robertson, deposition by Special Agent Nicole Robertson is the citation. Ron Logan lied to law enforcement about his whereabouts on February 13th. Ron Logan's physical build is consistent with that of the individual in the video captured by Libby's iPhone on February 13th, and his voice is consistent with that of the voice on the audio. Much like the facts in Allen, the evidence that third parties killed the girls in this matter is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The crime scene included many findings that the killers practiced asatru and that it was a ritualistic crime scene. To be exculpatory, evidence must be clear or tend to clear Mr. Allen of alleged fault or guilt. Simply put, if someone else committed the crimes, Richard Allen did not. Richard Allen has zero ties to asatru, Odinism, or the Vinlanders Social Club, unlike Brad Holder, Patrick Westphal, or Johnny Messer. The above evidence is exculpatory, unique, and critical to Mr. Allen's defense. The above evidence that the state wants to hide from the finder of fact, which the jury is the finder of fact, is admissible for two reasons. One, it demonstrates the lack of investigation and failures with the investigation. And two, the fact of a distinct possibility, if not high probability, that people other than Richard Allen killed Abby and Libby. Number three. We already had number three. This should be number four. Richard Allen has a right to introduce evidence of motive, as it is always relevant. Evidence of motive is always relevant in a criminal prosecution. And they cite case law. In the context of third-party motive evidence, an accused must show some connection between the third party and the crime before the evidence is admissible. Okay? In this case, the prosecution has no proof of any connection of Mr. Allen to Abby or Libby, nor have they identified any motive as to why Mr. Allen would kill them. There is absolutely no evidence as to Mr. Allen's motive to commit the crime. What does exist, however, is motive on the part of Patrick Westphal, Brad Holder, and others to kill Abby and Libby. Brad Holder knew Abby as his son was dating her at the time of the murders, and he had supervised them on at least 2 dates. Patrick Westphal participated in animal sacrifices. Asatru sacrifices are carried out in order to provide the offender with power through runes, blood, and binding runes, all of which are present at the location where the bodies were found. This provides motive for Brad and Patrick to murder Abby and Libby as part of an Asatru Odinist sacrifice. Wherefore, for the reasons identified above, Richard Allen, by counsel, respectfully requests the court deny prosecution's motion in limine as it relates to Odinism, cult or ritualistic killing, Brad Holder, Patrick Westphal, Johnny Messer, Elvis Fields, Ned Smith, Rod Abram, Kagan Klein, Anthony Klein, or Ron Logan, and for all other just and proper relief in the premises. Respectfully submitted. And then all of the case laws and all the citations listed. There we go. We did it. So do you guys have any thoughts? Is the defense crazy? Is the defense following the law? Is the defense providing Judge Gull with enough information to rule in their favor, which would be to allow them to give this third-party defense during the trial? I know that a lot of people doubt whether Judge Gull even reads what they say. Sounds messy. Yeah, it is. It's a messy case, and it's going to be a messy trial. I suspect it will make it to trial. I mean, there will be a trial, and that will probably be messy. One of the interesting things was that when she was denying, in one of the two here, orders that she gave today, what did she say? She said that, I think it was the first one, so that there would be no sanctions against the prosecution, and that the discovery would be given by certain dates, right? She said that the reason she was denying it was they didn't include some kind of reason, or whatever that the defense did not include. That by law they're required to attempt to get the discovery on their own, right? And they're required to try and resolve the discovery issues with the prosecution on their own, and that any filing saying what they are, that the prosecution isn't giving us our discovery, we want our discovery and we want them sanctioned, that any motion toward that needs to include the evidence of their attempts to informally, with each other, resolve getting the discovery. And I was watching Michelle After Dark, and so she went back, she pulled up their original motion, and it's all there. Exactly what she was asking for. So they said, we on this date we sent a certified letter, and and then there was this email, and then this and that, and they actually listed all the attempts that they made to try and resolve it. So did she even read it? Because if she read it, she would know that what she's saying, she's basing her her denial on, was actually there. So the minute you add sacrifices and pagan rituals, the case gets a weird rap. Yes. There's a book that I had read many years ago that outlined how many cases of sacrificial crimes and satanic crimes that are, I mean, because this isn't satanic, this is asatru, but let's just say ritualistic killings, how it's like it is that element is always hush-hushed. You know, they don't, that, you know, it's like, okay, somebody was murdered or somebody, you know, was attacked or whatever, but they totally, and the media does it too, you know, the media and the law enforcement and the coroner and like everybody doesn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. It's like they're hiding it. They don't want people to know how often it really happens, you know, and that was years ago. So the fact that that got out about this one is unique, that we know about it. So, well, unless you guys have some thoughts, we got through it. We see what the defense is trying to say, what they're trying to do. Will it work? Is it the truth? Is it made up? I'm staying neutral, you know, although I definitely don't think that it was done by one person. I don't think the crime was committed by any one person, whether Richard Allen was involved with other people or whether he was not involved at all. I don't think it was any one person that did it. Appreciate my sharing. Thank you, Frugal. You know, that was a lot to get through. You know, I was like, God, I hope you guys aren't bored with me just like reading through this, you know, which is why I did try to like offer a little bit of my own opinions as I was going along to kind of break up the monotony of reading, because you can read it yourself. You know, what do you need me for to just to read it if I'm not sharing some kind of opinion or insight that I believe can add to it. All right. So tomorrow is Sunday. You think it was Colonel Mustard in the library with the candlestick? Man, I grew up. I loved playing Clue. I love Clue, one of my favorite games. So with that, tomorrow's Sunday. So I think maybe I'll do a crossword tomorrow. And if anything else happens with any cases, and maybe we'll do a show. Oh, maybe on Monday. You know, I tutor Monday nights from 6 to 8, so that's why I usually am like I don't try to race home to like what happened last night. You know, where I walked in like 2 minutes before the show was supposed to, or right as it like hit 9 o'clock. I think it was 2 minutes after. So I jumped on starting it. You know, let you guys watch a video. So that's why I don't usually do Mondays, because I tutor in the evening. Oh my God, is today? Oh no. Okay, so I do actually. This one student I tutor, they were traveling, and they're back now. So I do have, but that it's from 6 to 7:30, so that's okay. I'm home in plenty of time because the tutoring is only 6 to 7. So yeah, we could do crosswords tomorrow. Cool. You have a morning stream. All right. You'll be here tomorrow night for whatever. All right. Excellent. Well, I hope I see the notification. I'm going to make sure that I've got notifications turned on your channel, Frugal, as soon as I'm done here. So before you guys go, just don't forget that love transcends time and space. So wherever and whenever you're watching this, I love you. I do. And I hope to see you guys again next time. And all right, have a great day. Have a great evening. Listening but couldn't chat. That's all right. Well, thank you for the watch hours. I mean, guys can like if you want. If you did like it, hit like. If you didn't, you don't have to. Look at all those great emojis. Thank you, Chalet. All right. See you next time.